Hare Krishna. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanushalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Sorry we got a little late in coming today. So how many of you were there yesterday? Okay, almost half of you. Let's do a quick recap of what was discussed yesterday before we move forward. What is the broad topic we have been discussing? Hanuman's journey to Lanka. Yes, true. Any key points from yesterday's session? Anyone remembers? Lead. What was lead about? Different perspectives for understanding the Ramayana. Yes. So, L was literal. So, at this level, we look for primarily story and then our focus is entertainment. Then E was ethical. Ethical is where we look at the choices that the characters made and we try to understand Okay, which choice was right? What can we learn from which choice? Then A was allegorical. And what does this refer to? What are the themes, the universal themes that are signified by those by those events, characters, or any specifics in the story? And the last was D was devotional. And yesterday, what was the character we discussed? Mainaka and the mountain. And what are the theme that we focused on? Yeah, two things. How to say no politely. That was the theme we focused on in the ethical level. And what was the key 3 points we discussed? Act. What was A? So when we are going to say no to someone, appreciate the gesture, appreciate the intention which they are doing it. And C was? Yes, communicate why is what we are doing, what is our priority, what is our principle. And then T is? Thank in an appropriate way. Perfect. We saw how Hanuman, in a very small interaction, did all these 3 things. And that allegorical level also we discussed. What does it refer to? Oh, okay, you remember that was specific. It was a little complicated word. Distractions, but excusable distractions, justifiable distractions. That means if Hanuman had stopped when Mainaka had told him to take rest, he could have done that. So he did not. So we discussed there the difference between excuses and they're not the same as explanations. And so now, today we will move forward to the second part in it. So each part is relatively independent. So those of you who were not there yesterday, I hope your blank faces won't continue for too long, because each session is related, but it is independent. So we are discussing Hanuman's journey from the southern coast of India to Lanka. So the first obstacle he mentioned was he encountered the Mainak. What was the second one? Surasa. So let's look at this obstacle and what it represents. Now, in general, when we study characters, especially characters in scriptures, it is often very easy to, when we study scriptural sacred characters especially, to idealize them. Idealize them means that to see that they are perfect and they were always perfect. And we can idealize the characters, and then this way we see, oh, whatever they did was always perfect. And that's one way of looking at it. But when we are looking at it from an ethical perspective, there is another way of looking at it. That is like an evolutionary perspective. This has nothing to do with Darwin's theory of evolution. But evolution means growth. That how characters mature and grow. Like we ourselves, when we interact with people, real living people, can say, hey, you have changed. Isn't it? We may or may not say that to someone. But we observe, okay, this person was like this. Maybe this person was a little short-tempered earlier. Then this person has become calmer. This person was a little rough, but it's become gentler. Or whatever. Sometimes people turn in the negative direction also. But we look at the evolution of people's character also. So when we are looking at scripture from an ethical perspective, there are 2 distinct things we could look at. Who is right? So when a particular decision is made, who is right, who is wrong? And this can sometimes make us a bit judgmental. It might be a little presumptuous for us to decide who is right. But while this can be done at times, a much safer and much more rewarding way is looking at what is right. This is more with a learning attitude. So for example, if you consider the Bhagavad Gita's first chapter, in chapter 1, purport, Srila Prabhupada often mentions, like I quoted yesterday, Prabhupada is saying that Arjuna is thoughtful. He's not just rushing into a war. So Arjuna's reflectiveness as contrasted with his impulsiveness. that is appreciated. So the overall depiction of Arjuna is positive. And in fact, the commentators like Madhusudan Saraswati explain that the whole purpose of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is to demonstrate how Arjuna is qualified to receive spiritual knowledge. Otherwise, for many Western people, especially when they read the first chapter, it is just filled with such complicated names. Drishtaketu, Drishtadyumna, Dhritarashtra. Each of these names can be like a tongue twister. So, what is the purpose of the first chapter? It is grounding the Gita in a historical context and thereby showing how Arjuna is thoughtful. But then, as soon as chapter 2 begins, Prabhupada seems to change tack. And Arjuna is in tears, tam tatha krupaya vishtam, ashrupurna kulekshanam, at the first verse. And Prabhupada says in the purports that Arjuna is attached. Such tears are the sign of ignorance and attachment and the bodily conception of life, the skin disease. And Krishna is going to speak the Bhagavad Gita to remove such ignorance, to remove such attachment. So, now here Prabhupada is focusing on Arjuna is attached. So now is Arjuna reflective and thoughtful, or is Arjuna attached? Well, the point is that our focus should not be so much on who is right as what is right. So in the first chapter we learn that, okay, when we have to make major decisions, let's not just rush into decisions. Let's think and analyze and learn. And similarly from second chapter we learn that, yes, in this world there are always upheavals at the material level. We should not get too overwhelmed by those. We could not let our emotions get completely locked in material things. So basically, we will see this at many levels in the scripture. So, when, I don't want to go into too many examples, but just take one more example. When, say, Chitraketu is cursed by whom? Parvati. So there, initially, Prabhupada will say that Chitraketu, he is observing that there are many sages over there. And none of the sages are objecting to anything that is happening over there. Then why does he have to laugh? Why does he should be respectful? But then afterwards when Parvati curses and Chitraketu remains very composed, at that time Prabhupada says that why did Parvati have to get angry? When none of the sages got angry, when Lord Shiva did not get angry, then why did she have to get angry? So the point is that Prabhupada's focus is not so much on determining who is right as what is right. So from this perspective, we can look at the various actions of various characters and see what we can learn from them. So an evolutionary vision of those characters means that we look at how they acted at a particular time and how they acted at a later time. And in similar situations, and what can we learn from those situations? So, we know Hanuman was cursed. And at one level, he was cursed because he was using his powers wantonly. Wantonly means out of childish whim, he was using his powers and he was creating nuisance. He was not a malicious person. So there are demons who misuse their powers. So when there's misuse, or whether we can say wanton use can be there. Wanton can be mischievous or it can be malicious. Now what does malicious mean? Evil. It wants to hurt someone. So for example, Ravana's misuse of his power, was it mischievous or malicious? Yes, it was malicious. He was doing terrible destruction and he was violating women and he was terrorizing people. On the other hand, Hanuman was misusing his powers. Misuse also is conceivable harsh word. It's wanton use, that was just mischievous. So I have some power, I'll do whatever I want with it. Just to show off, just to have fun. But so Hanuman was cursed. and he forgot his powers. And then, by Jambavan's speech, he regained his powers. But was there a difference? Had he learned to use his powers properly? So that is what is revealed in this journey also. So, mischievous Hanuman, as a child, any obstacle, I have power, I'll just use it to just oppose that or destroy that. So, for him, powers are just for fun. He was using it for fun. He saw the sun, he thought it's a toy. He just started jumping up to get the sun. Like that, it was just fun. But here, we see when Hanuman is going on his journey, now, he does not get caught in simply showing off his powers. And that is what is the focus in his encounter with Surasa. So he has seen off Mainak and he is flying through the sky. He's jumping, he's leaping, but the momentum of the leap is so great that he appears to be flying. The celestials, the sages and the devatas, they are astounded to see this magnificent feat. And as he's moving swiftly through the sky, the celestials start supporting him. Vayudev, the wind god who is his father, starts flowing from behind to give him support, to give him soothing air as well as to add to his momentum. Just like if a boat is moving, if the current of the water is in the same direction, then one can move forward smoothly. Then the sun is heating from overhead, but the sun becomes gentle. And while he is high up in the sky, there are clouds that are formed above him. And those clouds give him soothing shelter. So in this way, everything in the universe seems to be aligning to support him in his stupendous journey. And while he is moving forward, he is remembering the words of Sampati. He is remembering Lord Ram as he is moving forward. And Sampati has said, for those who are devoted to Ram, they can cross over the entire ocean of material existence. So what to speak of this small ocean? So he's confidently moving forward. And he's also sensing that we humans, we live away from nature. So sometimes changes in nature, we don't even notice them. Now when we want to know the temperature, we don't go out. We look at our phone. Isn't it? Or before going out, we look at the phone. But normally, those who live in the wilderness, they're very aware of how things are changing. So he can also feel that the atmospheric elements are all aligning in support of him. And generally, when things start working for us, that's the time when it's easy to become overconfident. To start exhibiting our powers. Yeah, everything is going to work for me. And that is the time when suddenly, as he's moving forward, a massive being appears right in front of him. And this being looks at him with large, fierce eyes. And she says, I am Surasa. And I have been blessed that anybody who passes by this area will become my food. No one can escape without entering into my mouth. Oh monkey, you are going to die today. Hanuman observes and he feels that this particular being does not seem to be a very evil being. He senses this by observing, but still it's an obstacle. And we'll see Hanuman is quite intuitive, he's sharp. Later on also when Vibhishan comes and wants to surrender, all the other Vanaras are saying that he's a brother of Ravan, how can you ever trust him? So Hanuman says you can look in his eyes and there is no deception over there. So he should be trusted. So Hanuman is a good judge of character that way. So he says that I am on an urgent mission to go for Lord Ram. Please let me go my way. And if it is Brahma's benediction, then it needs to be honored. Please let me complete my mission, and then I'll come back and I'll offer myself as food. Now this itself is actually a remarkably generous offer. It's like offering food to someone and offering oneself as food to someone. They're two very different things. So a Hanuman who would have been impetuous would have just tried to fight. How dare you think I'm going to be eaten? I'll show you my power. But he chooses a non-confrontational approach. And then Sursa says, do you think I was born yesterday? If you go now, you will never come back. He says, no, I will come back. He says, no, you cannot go from here. And she starts opening her mouth wide to take Hanuman in. And seeing this, Hanuman starts enlarging his form. And now she's just opening her mouth bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And Hanuman is enlarging his mouth. So both of them are now having a competition. And it just keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, in scripture, many times, there are facts and figures of how big this is and how big that is and how much the distance from here to there and how long this person lived. The facts and figures are important, no doubt. But when we are studying Shastra, Shastra has a purpose. And the purpose is not figures and facts. Figures and you could say dimensions or whatever. Even in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, when Parishit Maharaj is asking Shukdev Goswami about the cosmology, he is about to die in 7 days. He's not interested in getting a PhD in cosmology at that time. Isn't it? His purpose is to remember the Lord. And the idea is there are these facts and figures. He knows something about the universe. He wants to see how he can spiritualize that vision. So there in Shastra there are figures and dimensions, and there are values and principles. Which among these two are more important? Yes, values and principles are much, much more important. Yes, the figures and specifics can also be studied, but they needn't be emphasized so much. Like sometimes people ask, okay, when exactly was the Ramayana written? When exactly did the Ramayana occur? Okay, yes, that's a question that can be investigated. The Ramayana happened thousands and thousands of years ago. So it's very difficult to put a historical figure from modern historical methods of research. But the Ramayana is basically about values and principles. It is about wisdom. So putting a date on wisdom. When exactly was this written? That is not as important as going on a date with wisdom. Going on a date with wisdom means understanding, falling in love with this wisdom, making it a part of our own lives, and thereby transforming the trajectory of our life. That's important. That's the most important thing. So basically, the specific dimensions are not as important as the principle over here. So Surasa started making her mouth bigger, and Hanuman started making his form bigger, and Surasa started making her mouth even bigger, and Hanuman started making his form even bigger. And it just seemed to be a competition. And as the competition was going on, and then Hanuman suddenly changed tack. Suddenly, from a giant form, he just shrunk into an extremely tiny form. And he just quickly, with lightning speed, he entered into her mouth and came out. And then he looked back, almost a mischievous smile, with folded hands. Brahma's word has been honored now. I'll take my leave. And he started moving ahead. And Surasa, who had been looking very stern and fierce till now, her eyes started twinkling. and her face broke into that mouth had become very big. That mouth closed, it became a broad smile. And she said, actually, I am a goddess sent here to test you. You will face many challenges when you go into Lanka. And this was a test that you have passed gloriously. Go ahead with my blessings and may you be successful. So here, Hanuman's non-confrontational approach. At one level, we can say, at a literal level, this story is just clever. Oh, it's a cute idea. Just find a way out, just suddenly become small. At a ethical level, this reflects the power of humility. That Hanuman chose not to fight. So I'll talk about, now humility is something which you have heard many times, but I'll talk about humility, 4 dimensions of humility. I'll use an acronym PASS. And Hanuman passed through this obstacle, like pass an exam in flying colors. So we look at 4 aspects of humility. So what does humility mean and what does it not mean? First, P is priority. So when there is humility, our priority, what is the priority? It is not to display our power. It is to pursue our purpose. Sometimes some people want to show power just for the sake of showing the power. But the point is, we want to pursue our purpose. So, Prabhupada also says, we'll talk about this if we get time to go to the allegorical level. But at sometimes, people start just getting at this home, how clever I am, how smart I am, how powerful I am. Now, if that is required, that is well and good. But many times that may not be necessary. If we take a sports metaphor, if we take a cricket metaphor, okay, a team is moving towards victory, and at that time, now somebody, they could just hit a 1 run and get a victory, try to hit a sixer, and you get out and you lose the match. Well, the point is, you're not playing for the gallery. You're playing for the team. So there is no need to unnecessarily show one's power. There are times when the power is required to be shown. Like somebody is a good singer. Then naturally they want to use the singing abilities in the Lord's service. They sing beautifully and it's a great ability. It's a great gift which can be used to both draw our own heart towards the Lord and to draw others' heart towards the Lord. But sometimes some people may be so good at singing that they can sing with such complicated tunes that nobody can follow. Then their kirtan is not a participation, it's a performance. And maybe some places, if you are doing a kirtan concert or something like that, that might be nice. But when it's a participatory kirtan, then the focus should not be on showing our power. It should be on pursuing our purpose. That many times when conflicts occur, it is 2 people may have the same purpose. But for both people, sometimes showing their power becomes more important than pursuing the purpose. And when that happens, then the conflict is completely unnecessary and that also becomes escalated. So humility does not mean denying that we have power. Okay, we'll discuss about that on the next day. But the point is, at a very practical level, humility means, what is my purpose? How can I pursue my purpose? Sometimes people feel, if I am humble in today's competitive world, then people will walk over me. People will treat me like a doormat. And yes, that's a possibility. But it's a possibility primarily if we have a incomplete or a distorted understanding of humility. If, for example, if we are in a team, maybe we are the leader of the team, and then some member of the team has some suggestion. And if it's a good suggestion, then we don't have to worry, this person, do you think you're smarter than me? The point is not who is smarter. The point is, how can the project be done? Somebody has got a good suggestion. So humility can be seen as a vital quality for team spirit. Isn't it? That when somebody wants to work together as a team, then sometimes different people may be the main contributors at different times. And that willingness, okay, what is my purpose? That is much more important than who is showing how much power they have. At least in the past, that was one of the criticisms of Indian cricketers, was they were interested more in individual records than in the team's victory. Now that can become very distasteful if it happens like that. So the focus, with respect to our priority, humility ensures that our priority is advancing our purpose, pursuing our purpose. So Hanuman could have gone off and he said, I have been blessed by the Devata, I can fight with you, I can overpower you. He did not get in that direction. Then the next part is, now, what is the acronym we are discussing? Pass. How can we pass through something? So, difficulty. So, how do we view our abilities? Now, our vision of our abilities. Normally, we think of humility. The normal vision is a dual vision. Dual means that if you have humility, or what is the opposite of humility? Pride, or what is another word for it? False ego. It could be arrogance. Yes. Somehow the word pride has nowadays acquired a positive connotation. The meanings of words keep changing. Like somebody say hotel pride, hotel executive pride. I'm playing for my pride now. So no, I haven't seen across anywhere the word hotel arrogance till now. Maybe it will come in the future. So pride is in one sense equated with a sense of honor or something like self-respect. And we'll talk about self-respect a little later. So normally it is thought of as dual, humility or pride. But actually a triple vision is more complete. That means on one side is ego. But if you consider a pendulum, the other side, the other extreme of the pendulum is insecurity or even inferiority. And in between is humility. Okay, it's not a bad symbol here. So basically, ego means I can do everything. I can do everything. I can sing, I can lead, I can manage, I can cook, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. And yes, some people are extraordinarily talented. But nobody can say I can do everything. But when we start believing that I can do everything, and then when we find that we can't do everything, then we go to the other extreme and start thinking, I can do nothing. And this can go further. It is not only I can do everything, it can even become I am everything. Ishwaro aham bhogi. So ego basically is the idea that I am God. In fact, ego has a full form also. Ego is that which edges God out. We try to take over God's position. So basically, I can do everything, I am everything. And as opposed to that, the other is, I am nothing. And while nowadays, we often say people have a lot of ego, a lot of pride, a lot of arrogance. The reality is that most people today have a lot of insecurity and inferiority. And often their ego is their facade for concealing their insecurity. That I want to prove that I am so great. And such people are very fragile. That's why if a little disrespect, little criticism, even little snub, they get so angry about it. So what happens is that often the ego or the so-called pride, that is just a facade. Facade is a cover for insecurity. So this is where a person has, say, low self-esteem. Or it can even be no self-esteem. And what happens is, see, the more we don't respect ourselves, the more we get agitated when others don't respect us. Because the respect that we get from others is our way of compensating for our own insecurity, our own sense of unworthiness. And that is why when somebody doesn't respect us, we just start feeling so insecure, so utterly unworthy. Now, even from material perspective, so there is, you could say, in pride, Krishna differentiates between two things. When you're talking about demoniac qualities, dambho, darpo, abhimanascha. So, dambha, darpa, and abhimana. Now, each of these has slightly different connotations. This is in 16.4 in the Bhagavad Gita. So, from a psychological perspective, we can go into the details of each of these. But let's focus on something very simple at this stage. Amanitvam, adambhitvam. Krishna also says among the qualities that characterize knowledge. So, abhiman means to seek honor for what we have. Now, on the other hand, dam, for what we don't have. Now, what does it mean? Like somebody is very learned and they're proud of their learning. And they demand that I be respected for my learning. That is abhiman. It's not a desirable thing. But damba is even worse. I pretend to be learned. And I just use some jargon. I juggle some words. And among the ignorant, I can seem very learned. So some people are not very wealthy. They have to go for some wedding or something. They buy some very wealthy clothes from Amazon, wear that for the wedding, and then return it after that. So we try to seek credit for what we don't have. And such people, they become very petty and vicious when they feel that they are disrespected. On the other hand, people who have real abilities, they may have pride because of that, but if they are disrespected, they don't take it so seriously. Like, what is that saying? The dogs may bark, but does anyone remember? Prabhupada would quote that. Sorry? Okay, the elephant, there are different variants of that. That's true. The dogs may bark, but the caravan rolls on. The same thing. The dogs are tiny, so elephant is a giant, doesn't care. Caravan is basically the thing which carries a wealthy person or a king or someone. The dogs may bark, who cares? So basically, when a person becomes very aggressive, when they are disrespected, that's quite often not because they have so much pride, it's often because they have so much insecurity. Now, if you consider, humility is, I can do some things. And by extension, I am something or someone. And this is actually our philosophy. Mamaivamsho Jiva loke, jiva bhutaha sanatana. We are amsha, we are parts. So as parts, we all have certain abilities. We have the certain thing which we can definitely do. So our vision needs to be of this balance between ego on one side, insecurity on the other side. So here, how do we see our ability? Not that I can do everything, not that I can do nothing, but I can do some things. And therefore, I am something. I am someone. I have some value. So, with this understanding of humility, we will see Hanuman, he also gratefully accepts help. Somebody is omnipotent, who thinks that they are like God, they are omnipotent. for them to seek help from anyone becomes extremely difficult. When his tail is burned later on, he is ready to tolerate the burning of the tail. He doesn't have any magical plan. He says, okay, I'll tolerate it. But then suddenly what happens? He realizes, hey, there's no flame over here. And he doesn't immediately think, hey, maybe I have some power I didn't know I have. He doesn't think like that. He thinks, oh, this must be Ram's blessing. But Ram doesn't know about this. Probably it's Sita's prayers by which this is happening. So generally, when we have humility, as I have some abilities, but I don't have to be able to do everything. So this understanding of humility leads us to the third part of, what is the acronym again? Past. So priority, it's in one sense we are moving from when I'm functioning, what is my focus in the outer world? Then how do I see my own ability? And then beyond that, how do I see myself? So humility is not about devaluing ourselves. It is about some bigger. It is not about denying our abilities. It's not about downplaying our abilities. It is about recognizing that there is something bigger than me that matters. So when we talk about, when I said about this particular aspect of humility, the key point here is that if we consider on one side is ego. If we consider this coin, one side of the coin, one side of that coin is ego. The other side is insecurity or inferiority. I am so good. I am so great. I am so tiny. I am so worthless. But this coin, the coin is essentially of self-obsession. And humility enables us to throw away this coin. Yeah. Whether I am great or I am small, that is not the most important thing. We value something bigger than ourselves. And that is what enables us. So then the focus is that we are focuses on our purpose. So we are these four are linear, but they'll also be cyclic. I'll talk about how these four understandings of humility will feed each other in a cyclic way. So the focus of humility is not, oh, I am a terrible person, I am a worthless person. That is not the essence of humility. That can be actually a pathology. Thinking I am a terrible person, that is not a very healthy thing. So have any of you heard this sentence? You know, I am a fallen soul. We often speak this, and often we equate this with humility. But many times what happens is, this fallen becomes so big that the soul is forgotten. So I am a fallen soul, that becomes I am fallen. Yes, this fallen is also a temporary designation. It is also an upadhi. And bhakti is sarvopadhi vinirmuktam. So just as to think that I am an Indian or an American, I am a male or female, or I am an engineer or I am a lawyer, and this or that, all these are temporary designations. So even our fallen condition, that is a temporary designation. And we need to be aware of it. We all are fallen in different ways, and we need to be aware of it. But that should never become our sole self-identification. Just like if I'm coming to America, then one of the key things which I'll teach in America is that how we are spiritual beings. We are not just our physical shells. But when I'm at the immigration, if they ask me, where are you from? He says, I don't belong to this material world. I'm a spiritual being. That's not what I can say, isn't it? There I have to show them my Indian passport, isn't it? So, we need to be aware of our present role and identity here. But that shouldn't become our sole identity. So, we may fall in some ways. but we are souls, and that should be the most important thing. So humility is not about devaluing ourselves. The primary focus is on valuing something bigger than ourselves. So Prabhupada, for example, in his song Markine Bhagavad Dharma, he says, Khudrami dinahina. He says, I'm a fallen person. I'm dinahina. Bhakti nahi, Veda nahi. He says, I don't have any devotion. I don't have any knowledge of the Vedas. But this does not make people, Prabhupada, feel insecure or lacking in confidence. Prabhupada's focus is not that I am unqualified. Prabhupada's focus is that, Krishna, you are omnipotent. So his focus is on Krishna consciousness. So essentially what humility does, when humility in one sense is meant to take us from self-consciousness to Krishna consciousness. That is the purpose of humility. Now self-consciousness can be in the form of insecurity. But both of them are self-consciousness. And we want to get out of self-consciousness. So if in the name of humility we are trapping ourselves in self-consciousness, I am fallen, then that is not healthy. We do say Trunadapi Suni Chena, but how does that verse end? Kirtaniya Sadahari. So we want to think of ourselves as small so that we can focus on the big. So Kirtaniya Sadahari is the primary purpose. So with respect to the self, it's important that we don't get caught in devaluing ourselves too much. Some people have a lot of ego and then that ego has to be cut down. But it's important that that should not be the primary conception of spirituality. I was in Australia at one place, and there the temple community leader is somehow quite friendly with me. He's much older to me, but we have become good friends. And then after that, I was talking with other devotees over there, and they said, we are all very afraid of this temple leader. He said, why? He just publicly chastises us. And he's so cutting. We can't bear it. Then when I was talking with him, we talked various things. I said, with all due respects, can I share something with you? Now, whenever somebody says with all due respect, that means what you're going to speak is not going to be very respectful. But I said, people feel very afraid of you when you and especially when you chastise them publicly. He says, I don't like to do that at all. But it's my duty. I said, what do you mean? He said, if I don't chastise people, how will they develop humility? I said, Prabhu, again with all due respects, when we chastise people publicly, what they develop is not humility. It is humiliation. And humility as different as fasting and starving. What is the difference between fasting and starving? Fasting is voluntary, isn't it? We choose to fast. Starving is forced. So basically, humility is, you could say, false ego rejected. Sorry, I don't need that respect. I'm not too worried about how much people respect me. But humiliation is false ego. Very different emotionally. Now, on some rare occasions, humiliation may help in developing humility. But that happens only only when there is a very great implicit trust among the two people. And the person who is chastising, that person, when the chastiser, when the person who is receiving the chastisement is completely convinced that this person is actually my well-wisher, then that chastisement, especially done in public, it leads to some humility being developed. Otherwise, it just leads to people feeling humiliated. And that is why, if we consider, it is amanina manadena. So, humility has to be a personal defense. It can never be a social imposition. We cannot make anyone humble. It has to be something which has to be developed by a person from within. And the culture that we are taught is, yes, we don't expect respect ourselves. But we are taught to give respect to others. And the idea is that we want to create a very warm, welcoming, and sweet community. So, our focus should never be on thinking that I have to make someone else humble. I have to make myself humble. And as far as making others humble, if we try to make others humble, they will only grumble. And the relationship will take a tumble. So, it really doesn't work. So, we are not meant to make others humble. We are meant to cultivate humility, and by our being humble, others may become inspired to be humble. And if they don't become inspired to be humble, then sometimes we may have to give some feedback. But it has to be done very carefully. It is not that humiliation will foster humility. That's why when we talk about humility, it is not about devaluing ourselves. What we need to do is, we want to focus on inspiring within others an attitude of service. Just like when we go for our book distribution. Say somebody is going for book distribution, and when they go for distribution at that time, sometimes people are warm. And sometimes people are just so cold, as if they look at us as if we don't even exist. And then just dealing with people like that will create some humility. When we try to do some service, so we focus not on making people humble, but encouraging people to focus on something beyond themselves. Even when we start sharing Krishna Bhakti, like as a traveling speaker, here you have a very wonderful community. Sometimes in some places I go, the audience is looking at me as if they're watching a foreign language movie without subtitles. Then I asked one senior devotee, if the audience doesn't seem interested at all, then how do I keep myself enthusiastic? So he's very practical. He see that when people will be interested. So it is that or chastise people if they're not. On a service is that focus on something bigger than ourselves. That will naturally bring humility. Brings me. What is the acronym we are discussing? So last part is S was self, but S is also. So I indicated that for us the focus is Krishna consciousness. Focus is not. So humility, it enables us to look up and then ahead. Whereas both ego as well as insecurity, they keep us look around. Looking around means, oh, this person is better than me. Oh. So what happens whenever we see somebody better than us, we start feeling insecure. Whenever we see somebody who is better than us, we get an inferiority complex. When we see somebody who is not as good as us, then we get a superiority complex. In the end, all that we get is a complex. Isn't it both ways? So we're just too caught in looking around. But the focus of humility is, first step is look up. Look up means we focus on Krishna. And then look ahead means, how can I serve Krishna? So Krishna exists, Krishna loves me, Krishna cares for me. When we say that Mamaivamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhutaha Sanatanaha, often we use the Sanatanaha, the eternal part of Krishna, to refute Mayavad. And that at a philosophical level, that is true. But that same point, Sanatana, at a psychological level means that we are always parts of Krishna. No matter how many mistakes we have committed, no matter how many misdeeds we have done, Krishna is never going to abandon us. So when we look up, what it means is, when we look up, we understand that we may be unqualified, but we are never. Whatever it is we have to do, we may be unqualified. We may not have the qualifications to do that particular thing. But Krishna never rejects us. Disqualified means you're not allowed to participate itself. So we look up, we are always included in Krishna's team. We are always a part of Krishna's team. So we are part of Krishna. That means we have a part in Krishna's plan. Every one of us has some role. Say somebody is elected in the Indian cricket team. If they're a part of the cricket team, that means they have a part in that team. Now maybe their part is not as the most flashy batsman or the most flashy bowler, but they have a part. So like that, each one of us has a part. And humility means we look up. Okay, Krishna exists, Krishna is my Lord. Krishna has included me in his team, in his plan. And then we look ahead. Look ahead means, okay, Krishna, in this particular situation, how can I serve you? How can I move forward? So when we have this attitude, how can I serve? How can I move forward? Then essentially what happens, I said how humility is a power. Humility can actually be empowering. And in contrast with that, ego or insecurity, both of them empowering. Ego can seem empowering, but that is only as long as we are surrounded by people who are better than us, or as long as we think I can be better than others. And then what happens is, otherwise there is this, there are people who are manic depressive. Manic depressive means when they see that I am better than others, I can become better than others, they have manic levels of energy. They can work like almost mad people. But when they start seeing I'm not getting any results, when people are not recognizing what I'm doing, everybody seems to be better than me, they sink into depression. And one day they think I'm going to conquer the world. The next day they think they cannot even conquer the rug that is covering their body on their bed. Why do I get out of my bed also? So it becomes like that. So manic depressive is basically, this is Rajoguna and depressive is Tamoguna. So you want to go beyond this. So humility is actually very empowering for each one of us. And Hanuman, he demonstrates this humility. He focuses on not on displaying his power, on pursuing his purpose. He doesn't think that I have to show the world that I am better than Surasa. No, I have to pursue the service of Lord Ram. And because I have to pursue the service of Lord Ram, how best can I pursue it? So in the next obstacle, last part of the session will tomorrow, when there is a fight required, he does fight. He will fight with Simhika when required. But he'll fight with Simhika in a different way and Lankin in a different way. And that we'll be discussing in tomorrow's session. So to summarize, what we discussed today was the power of humility. And first I talked about how Hanuman, in dealing with Surasa, is actually showing the evolution of his character. That he was earlier mischievous, but now he has become mature. He doesn't get into any unnecessary fights over there. So we look at these characters, how we can choose, so look at who is right, or we can focus on what is right. That is a safer and a more learning filled way of looking at sacred characters. And when we are looking at it from this perspective on what is right, not so much on who is right, that also we discussed that when we are studying scripture, we can focus on not so much on the facts and the figures and numbers or figures and dimensions within scriptures. We focus on what? The values and principles. Putting a date on wisdom is not as important as going on a date with wisdom. And then we discussed 4 aspects of humility in terms of 4 ways in which it shapes our vision of things. So you could say a humble vision of reality. In that we discussed. The acronym was PASS. So P was priority. So when we are humble, what is not our priority? Displaying our power. Hanuman was not concerned with showing that I am better than Surasa. His focus was on pursuing his purpose. So such a purpose-driven approach. So we talked about how this can ensure that humility means we can have actually team spirit. We can take suggestions from other team members or subordinates also. So it's a very practical and useful virtue. So P was priority. Then A was ability. So here we focus on how there can be 2 extremes. Ego is I can do everything, and insecurity is I can do nothing. And in between is humility. I can do some things. So this understanding of humility is actually a much more in alignment with the reality of who we are. So both ego and insecurity, they both keep us caught in, what is the third part? PA, self. So self was, there is the self obsession. One side is ego, the other side is insecurity. So basically, it is humility means that we focus not so much on devaluing ourselves, we focus on valuing something bigger than ourselves. So it could be our service, our responsibility, our purpose, our Lord. And in that way, humility takes us out of self-obsession. And so basically from self-consciousness, whether it is positive or negative, to Krishna consciousness. So this journey, this pathway is paved by humility. And the last part we discussed was about spirituality. Spirituality means that the ultimate reality that we have. S is, that is, humility means what do we do and what do we not do? Humility means we look up and then we look ahead. Look up means we understand that we are always parts of Krishna. That Krishna always has a part for us, and then we see, okay, how can I play my part? Whereas if the humility is not there, then what happens? We keep looking around at who is better than us or who is worse than us, and either way we stay caught in complexes. Here we become empowered. Okay, I always have a part. And if we consider it, one last point we can say is these 4 can actually work in promoting each other. We can start from anywhere. We can start from a priority, move towards my ability, then move towards myself, and then move towards spirituality. Or I can start from spirituality and then move towards priority. From wherever we start, all of these 4, they fuel each other. So we can start from a spirituality. When we focus on chanting the holy name, then focusing on Krishna, then what happens is, then that spirituality will help us to, my priority is, okay, is on serving Krishna, and not so much on showing what power I have or lamenting what power I don't have. And then like that, each of this can help us to, this you can say is actually the circle of empowerment. So this is humility as a power means, this is a The circle of the circle or dynamism of empowerment that comes through the development of humility. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for such a wonderful class. Regarding humility, how can we practically develop humility? Is it a mindset? Do we keep, like how we have our acharyas say that, when a feeling of lust develops, they feel like hitting their mind with a slipper or something, right? So is it a mindset?
Hitting our mind with?
Slipper, chappal, or spitting at the mind. Like.
So how do we develop humility? My understanding at least is that in general, most virtues are not developed by focusing on those virtues. That is one of the key differences between virtues and skills. Skills are more external. Like say, if I want to learn a new language or if I want to pronounce words clearly, then it is by focusing on that I learn that skill. Whether we want to learn cooking, whether we want to learn singing, skills require focus on. Whereas generally, virtues are developed by focus on something bigger. In general, say for example, how do I become honest? Now I can say I can become honest by not speaking lies. Well, that is just the negative way of saying the same thing. But if we focus on, okay, why do I want to be honest? Because, that is the way I live in harmony with the universe. That is the way I please my Lord. That is the way I contribute to the community that I'm a part of. So then, when we focus on something bigger, now we can be aware of humility, but we can be aware of honesty, what it means. But in general, virtues are very rarely developed by focusing on those virtues alone. It's just like happiness. Happiness is most often a byproduct of doing something valuable. Most of the times when we try to do something for happiness, that is just very flickering. I eat something because I enjoy it. Okay, I eat it and after that it's all over. But then when we have a good meal with someone whom we care for, and in that time we have good food also, but the focus is not just on enjoying the food, focus on bonding with the person. And then we cook a nice meal, we honor the nice meal, and then we move forward over there. So, in general, virtues are best developed by focusing on a bigger purpose, where that virtue plays an important role. So, how do we develop humility? It is by focusing on our service to Krishna. It's like, how do we develop faith? It is generally if we try to take up some challenging service. Then in the process of doing that challenging service, we will face situations which we feel, I just can't deal with those situations. How am I going to deal with them? And then Krishna helps us find some way ahead. That's how our faith develops. Now, of course, we can hear about pastimes where Krishna protects devotees. And we can hear examples of how there are great devotees who are humble. And that's helpful. But in general, it is that it's like, just as we can't lose weight by reading books about weight loss. That's helpful. That could be helpful, but eventually it will apply that. And what does the application mean? Application means if a person is just too caught in counting every single calorie that they eat, they'll just become too food conscious. And they won't even enjoy the food that they're eating at that time. Isn't it? So, but on the other hand, if they develop something meaningful to do in their lives, often food is the way to fill some inner vacuum, inner emptiness. So once they start doing something meaningful, then food falls in its right place. So like that, the ego also, it goes in its right place, you could say, once we have something bigger to focus on. So while our acharyas do talk about, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, talks about, say, Amara Jivan Sada Paperat and things like that. But if we look at his biographies, if you look at those who interacted with him and what their experiences were, no, he was not conscious thinking, oh, I'm so fallen, or how am I going to develop humility? He just focused on service to Krishna. And especially for us as devotees, if we focus on taking up some service that is challenging, that is at least somewhat bigger than our capacity to do service, or at least what we think is our capacity, then that itself will bring humility. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Just on the side topic that you mentioned about Shastras is not about figures and dimensions.
No, not is not about, that is not the priority, that is not the focus.
Yeah, sorry. So, so when reading those parts, I get bored. So, do you recommend skip it or take something from it?
Well, skipping is if we feel uninterested when we are reading parts which are full of facts and figures. Well, we need to understand that scripture contains something for everyone. And in general, the point is that some people are very interested in such things, and for them, that is also one avenue to connect them with Krishna. So we could read them once as a service. If we want to study Shastra, we have to serve Shastra. Krishna through literary manifestation. But then when we want to reread sections, we may focus on those sections which we get the most nourishment from, which we are most inspired by. That's fair enough. Okay, thank you. Yes,
with your permission, today Rama, can I sing 2 minutes Rama on Rama? 2 minutes.
Sure, I think just we'll finish it. If you have any, if you don't have any questions, then we'll finish with singing. You have any comments from Krishna Prabhu?
I was so this developing humility. I was hesitating to ask, but since how would you offer, or how should we think about, like when we say developing bhakti leads to developing good qualities in ourselves automatically, or through bhakti all the good qualities follow. So from that angle, when we look, and how you have explained it in a very nice way as well, could you say something to sort of
okay, that's a very good question.
Connect these 2 points?
It's a very good way of saying that I don't know the answer. That's a good question. But okay, I'll try to answer from my small perspective over here. If we look in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Rishabhdev's teachings, this particular Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavatte Kinchana, that for one who has devotion to the Lord, for them all good qualities develop. Now, the point of that section is to glorify bhakti. And if you look at the preceding verses, bhakti is contrast other paths, the path of karma, the path of jnana, and it's emphasized bhakti is the supreme path. So if we consider that, so generally if we consider in scripture, there is a point, and there is the point of a point. The point of a point means why is that point being made? So if you only look at the point and forget the point of the point of the point, then we might get a little bit lost. So generally speaking, when bhakti is being glorified, the idea is that now around the Atma is the subtle body, then that is the gross body. So now it is the body, we could call it the mind, which is basically a subtle body, and then there's the soul. So at one level, all our conditionings, they are present in the mind. These are the, and what bhakti does is, bhakti is, if we consider the Lord to be above us, then bhakti links us to the Lord, and as the soul starts becoming active, then the conditionings within the mind get cleansed. And that's how the soul's natural qualities start becoming manifested, and whatever anarthas are there, they start getting dissipated. So in that sense, bhakti will lead to the development of all qualities. Now, having said that, we could consider bhakti itself in many ways. One is, bhakti can be, say, direct devotional activities, say chanting the holy names, or worshipping the deities. This is bhakti, and that's definitely true. But bhakti, we can also have a very much more inclusive definition. Anything that helps us connect with Krishna. So if we consider the point of Yukta Vairagya, then from the perspective of Yukta Vairagya, that anything that helps us connect with Krishna is bhakti. So this is a much more, is a more specific definition. This is a more inclusive understanding. So for example, if somebody is having a lot of ego, then for them specifically to study the sections in scripture which talk about humility, or even for them to hear some classes about humility, at least they get a direction. Okay, this is the direction I should be going. And putting in some conscious efforts to develop certain qualities which may help us to serve Krishna better. So for example, somebody might have been having a very rough upbringing, and whenever they speak very loudly. Sometimes they use some foul words while speaking. Now, if they're going to be in a cultured society, as a devotee society, they need to become a little more sensitive about how they speak. And then focusing on that aspect, we don't have to see that, okay, that sensitivity of speech will naturally develop. Will. But one key point over there is yasyasti bhaktir bhagvatya akinchana. So it is that the soul's natural virtues start manifesting when the soul is selflessly connected with Krishna, akinchana, without any ulterior motives. But that may take a lot of time. So till that point, if somebody has to make some conscious efforts outside the ambit of bhakti, you can see them also as within the ambit of bhakti, that this, I'm doing this for serving Krishna. So Prabhupada said that when they were building the Vrindavan temple, and they are finding very difficult to get cement, and finally they got cement. And Prabhupada said, counting these cement bags accurately, he says this is as important as doing your japa. Now, as counting the holy names when we're doing our japa. The point there was that when we are doing jap, at that time we are praying to Krishna, please engage me in your service. And if we are serving Krishna and are serving his construction, building a temple for Krishna, then counting the cement bags is also service to Krishna. So in that sense, bhakti will ultimately lead to development of all virtues. But if for a particular role or a particular service, a particular virtue is helpful, then putting some conscious effort to develop that virtue should not be seen as going outside the domain of bhakti. Okay? Does that answer your point? Thank you so much.
What I got reminded was where people in the Kirtan, in the first 20 limbs, there is one of the limbs which says that you clean the heart. Where is the possibility for Lord Mukunda to appear? So that is one of the limbs. So one of the evidences for the 64 limbs is somewhere.
Okay.
20 years back. But
That's a good way of looking at it, yes.
Sense that one should make conscious effort to clean their heart, and again, humility is a big part of it. With that intention, that if that happens, then Lord Mukunda will appear. So with that intent to
Yes, true.
for Lord Krishna to connect with Krishna, and therefore I must clean my heart. Kind of that I got reminded by your explanation. Very nice.
That's a good way of it. Yes, true.
Kind
That the Lord will manifest in the pure heart. So we do have to purify our heart. So there are both kinds of references are there in the Bhagavad Gita. Isham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. And then sarvadharman mamekam charanam vraja. Aham tvam sarvapebhyo mokshaish. And one side Krishna is to cleanse ourselves of sinful activities. Then you can practice bhakti determinedly. And Krishna also said, you just practice bhakti, I'll cleanse you. So both the bhakti has the dynamism within it. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. So, Shri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu.